Yeah, thank you very much. And it was indeed a very interesting experience because I strongly believe that lawyers and notaries, and especially notaries, as legal professionals, are one of the most effective wheels for the fight against money laundering. And as you already have said in your introduction speech, we live in a time of constant change. So we are currently facing all this coronavirus, which brings again new methodologies, new typologies used by criminals and by money launderers. And so we need the force of every reporting entity, of everyone who is in the boat at this fight against the criminals. And when we look at the fourth anti-money laundering directive, we see very clearly that it's a prevention directive. So it's already in the name. It's a directive to prevent the misuse of the financial system for money laundering and terrorist financing. And this has a very, very important message in it, meaning that every customer, every client that you prevent from entering the sector of taking advantage of your services, which may be misused, is already a success. So we can't measure successful fight against money laundering really effectively by comparing figures, how many people have been brought to court, how many people have been imprisoned or judged for money laundering. But the fact is, how many people could you prevent from misuse the systems for money laundering and terrorist financing? And that again is a very, very substantial matter of awareness within the sectors. And having said this, I would like to point out something that happened at the very beginning of the project. So I was invited to serve as a scientific advisor, as expert for this project. And the first task was to make a training manual, which I did. And the training manual was starting with a wording. It was something like, notaries and lawyers and other legal professionals are very likely to be abused for money laundering and terrorist financing. And one of the first comments that was coming from one of the member state countries was like, we should remove this section from that manual because it wouldn't shed a very good light on the notaries to communicate that they can be abused for money laundering. And that was actually nailing the whole problem that we have with fighting money laundering in the non-financial sector. So we kept this passage in the text, and I would again fight for it to leave it in. And the fact is that the more awareness that people have about the possibility of being misused, the better they are in the position to develop counter systems, to live a very good, high quality, everyday compliance. And reading the reports of the workshops that we had in different European countries, this project was clearly a very, very big success, because there is one common thing that was like, just like a red line through all the reports. And it was this understanding of the own risks. So in one report, we had, for instance, as lesson learned, the finding that, yes, we can be part of a money laundering route, and it's important to have the awareness. And the other very important finding was that we can do it only together. And that brings me to another point. So it was a very, very good thing, I think, that the workshops were not only presented to notaries all across Europe, but we had also a number of cross-sector participations from lawyers, from supervision authorities, also the FIUs who contributed in a very, very good manner through all of that workshops. And I think that that's the right approach to come together, to exchange information, to share experiences, because when you are not aware of your risks, then you maybe also don't see the possible doors where the risks can come in. The broader the field is you look at, so if you have, for instance, FIU telling you the experiences they have, or lawyers telling experiences, banks sharing experiences, then you start to see the whole puzzle, and then you are in the position to be aware of the part that you play in that picture. And I think that this was a goal that was clearly reached by all of that workshops. So there were very, very highly interested notaries. There were good questions. There were fruitful discussions. And at the end of each workshop, there was always like an aha effect where you just seen, okay, now we see that we can be misused. Now we see that we can be part of a scheme that money launderers put in place. And it's still a fact that the creation of companies and the purchase of real estates are one of the mostly used typologies, mostly used methodologies. Why? Because you can move a lot of money by only having one business. So it's a very accessible way for the criminals to launder money. And in that case, especially in these fields of expertise, it's really all about prevention. So it's like putting traffic lights and speed limits on the street so that people can cross the street safe. And you can really compare it to the anti-money laundering directive and to the work that you do and the awareness that is built there. And I think that this is also a very important stone that has been built for the future. Because when you look through the anti-money laundering directive, if you look at the developments, then there is one word that is getting stronger and stronger, and that's the third-party reliance. But the third-party reliance can only work if all wheels in the cart are moving in a similar manner. So if everyone knows what's his or her role, if everyone really does the things that are required in a very qualified and high manner. And in discussions with legal professionals, especially also notaries, you often hear that it must be possible that you rely on a bank. But counterwise, when you talk, for instance, with banks, they also say, okay, the anti-money laundering directive is writing here that when money come through a business that where a notary or a lawyer or another legal professional has been part of, then I can rely on that data as well. So you have to keep that in mind. You are not only the one who can rely on others' services, but you also need to be the basis for others, especially banks, to rely on. And I think, and that's really something that I'm convinced of, that successful fight against money laundering and also about against the emerging threat of terrorist financing can only be as successful as the weakest player, as the weakest part. Because criminals are clever, they change their methodologies, their typologies on a daily basis. They use the weakest part of the whole system to integrate the money into the financial system. And I'm really very happy and thankful that this project added a lot of value, that notaries in Europe are definitely not the weakest part anymore. So that's also something that I see also in my daily work with notaries in my daily work with governments all across Europe. The sector was the sector is stronger now, and I think that's a really good indicator to measure that the project has been a success. So with regard to the future, what would I wish for? I think that there should be definitely a follow-up, maybe on a regular basis, because it was such a worthy work that has been developed here, and so much knowledge has been shared. And this information sharing on an international level should be kept up, definitely. So I think if we keep going the same direction, then it would definitely add value to the fight against money laundering and terrorist financing. Thank you.